In this Blender tutorial for beginners, I will show you how I made a procedural camo material. I'll be using 4 additional nodes to make these simple camo material. The first is the Mix RGB, which will allow me to mix 2 shader nodes together. I connect this to the principled shader. The second is the RGB node, and this allows me to choose a color. The third is the color ramp, which is used for mapping color values onto a gradient. The fourth is the Musgrave Texture. This evaluates a fractal Perlin noise. I changed the color of the RGB node to a gray-brown. I'm using the hex code 8B8875. This will be the base color for the US Marine-style desert camo material. I connect the RGB node to the color 2 of the Mix RGB node. Now I move on to the color ramp. I changed the black color stop to a pale green using the hex code 9F A090. Add a second color stop and change its color to a mid-brown using the hex code 7B6341. I add a third color stop. I change it to a dark brown using the hex code 63432A. And I connect the color ramp node to the color 1 of the Mix RGB node and change the positions of the color stop. Now connect the Musgrave Texture node to the color ramp node, which will allow me to see the actual camo material. I'll now make some changes to the scale, detail, dimension, and lacunarity of the Musgrave Texture node. Change the scale to 20, and this will scale the bass noise octave. Change the detail to 10, which increases the number of noise octaves. Decrease the dimension to 1, which decreases the difference between the magnitude of each 2 consecutive octaves. And I increase the lacunarity to 5, which increases the difference between the scale of each 2 consecutive octaves. I will now make 2 alternatives using the same basic material. Choose the second sphere, and using the drop-down menu, I add the same material. I then click on the number beside the material name to make a copy of the original material. I rename it, and I'll make this camo look like a US Navy style camo. I change the RGB color to a dark blue. I use the hex code 333F52. I change the leftmost color stop to a dark gray. I use the hex code 2A2829. I change the center color stop to a green color. I use the hex code 55615D. I change the right color stop to a light gray in the hex code BC. I then changed the positions of the color stops. Now I choose the third sphere. Using the drop-down menu, I select the original material, then click on the number beside the material name, make a copy of the original material, and rename it. I'll make this camo look like a US Army style camo. Change the RGB color to a dark green, hex code 326330. I changed the first color stop to a dark blue in the hex code 3C3849. Change the second color stop to a tan, the hex code C4BCA9. The third color stop I changed to a brown using the hex code 7B6661. And I changed the positions of the color stop. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on the notifications. Have a good day.